When Nintendo unveiled the Nintendo Switch 2 during the Switch 2 Direct back in April, they revealed that there would be 3 major overarching types of games playable on the Switch 2. Obviously, you had Switch 2 games, Switch 1 games that were backwards compatible, and Switch 2 Edition games. Now, every company can do this, but Nintendo announced 4 of their own games getting Switch 2 editions. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were 2 that were available at launch. We got Super Mario Party Jamboree and Kirby and the Forgotten Land. As of this Thursday, all of these games have now released, and Nintendo hasn't announced any new ones. But I feel like some of them must be coming, right? First though, I want to talk about the ones that are already out, because it's been a bit of a mixed bag, hasn't it? The first 2 of these were the Zelda games, of course. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom both got the Switch 2 edition at the launch of the Switch 2 itself. And these are the more basic of the upgrades that we see. Nintendo kind of acknowledged this because, these are the cheapest ones. They only cost $10 for the upgrade pack, and they're even free if you have a Switch Online Plus expansion pack membership, which is how I got them. Naturally, these ones don't add as much to the experience. They mostly just upgrade the resolution from around 720p, 800p, 900p to 1440p, I believe, is the target resolution now. And more importantly, I would say they run at 60 frames per second, and they also support HDR, which I know is supposed to be a big thing, but I don't know what it is. I can never really tell if HDR is good or not. I don't. It's hard to perceive the difference unless I have 2 things side by side. So I assume there's a good upgrade there, but it's kind of hard to tell. But those visual upgrades, those are also available for free in a lot of games. Super Mario Odyssey got a visual upgrade for free, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So that's not really what Nintendo is charging for here. Nintendo is charging more so for new content, and the Zelda games have probably the least of it, because the only thing that's really been added here is through the Nintendo Switch app, and they're more so peripheral things for the adventure. You have voice memories, which I would say is probably the most value you can get out of this, because it's interesting to just hear all these voice notes from Zelda and other characters, in the case of Tears of the Kingdom. Adding a little bit more lore. I think if you're playing these games from the beginning, this is really the only feature you should use from the Zelda Notes app, because the other big thing that was added, you have the ability to share auto-build schematics in Tears of the Kingdom, which is also kind of cool. But I also don't know how active the community is going to be around that. I know I never use that feature. And then the other thing is the completion guidance, where you can see the map of the game and pretty much every collectible is laid out for you. And I have 100% at both of these games thanks to that. But I really think you shouldn't use that if you're playing the game for the first time, because having this map with all of the waypoints to everything really turns the game into more of a map game than an open world game. I think this edition is really good if you've already beaten the game and you're just someone who likes to achieve 100% completion later on, which is kind of the case with me, where I didn't really, I didn't want to replay the games in their entirety, but I had beaten them, I had collected as much as I could without any help. So having this now made it interesting to just go back into the world and collect all the things that I was missing, and also listen to all the voice notes, which was, it was interesting, though I don't really remember many of them. I think if you're exploring this world for the first time and you listen to those things as you're playing, they'll become a lot more memorable. For me, because I had already beaten the game a while back, just listening to these things, speed running through them, kind of took away a little bit of value from it. But there's some cool additions here. Obviously, it's not major, and Nintendo recognizes that, and that's why it is the cheapest of the upgrade packs. And I would say maybe the visual upgrade is worth it alone, just because it's so surreal to see these games running at 60 frames per second. I don't know, it's not the first Zelda game to run at 60 frames per second. We saw that with Skyward Sword HD. But it's crazy how much this changes your perception, because I'm so used. I spent hundreds, thousands of hours in these games playing at 30 frames per second and with sometimes very unstable frame rates. So seeing it at 60 is a pretty big upgrade. So yeah, I would say like Zelda, the Zelda games, the Switch 2 editions were solid. You know, they definitely make the game a lot better, but not. They don't necessarily add more value. They just make the experience smoother, and they make it easier to get completion, which I think is only really useful if you've already played these games. Then we have Super Mario Party Jamboree, which I can't speak to that from personal experience because I don't own that game, and I wasn't really interested in it. But what I have heard from people is that the Switch 2 edition of that was terrible. Like, the additions they made to Super Mario Party Jamboree were cool. Like, there's some cool new modes with the mouse games specifically, look pretty interesting. But they made it so that the base experience and the Switch 2 edition are completely separate within the game. So you can play the original Switch game with all the modes that it has, but you don't get any of the upgrades, like the visual upgrades. It doesn't run at higher resolution or frame rate. It's just the original experience. Or you can play the new content that's been improved, which includes the new content, and it does include Mario Party mode as well, but it doesn't include everything else that was in Mario Party Jamboree originally. So there's this really weird divide. I don't know what was going on there. So that was a pretty bad Switch 2 edition. And now, just this week, we got Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 edition plus Star Crossed World, which these names are terrible. I hope they simplify that in the future. But this is probably the most valuable Switch 2 edition so far. It adds 12 new levels, which are, well, twists on existing levels, but they might as well be new levels because they take you to whole new areas. Like a lot of them, you see the same entrance, but then something is blocked and you just need to go to a completely different path. So they might as well be entirely new levels. They're just set in familiar scenarios, but they're pretty much new levels entirely. And they're pretty cool. I haven't played all of them just yet. I have been playing it as much as I can in my free time and collecting everything. And it's more Kirby and the Forgotten Land. The game was amazing to begin with, so obviously these new levels are also great. So very, very fun. And I know there's also a new boss rush mode, the Ultimate Cup ZEX, I think is the name they gave it. I'm curious to see that because I did get both of the boss rush difficulties in the base game. They're pretty challenging, so if this new one is even harder, I'm curious to see. I'm still a little rusty, like just playing 12 levels without any boss fights. I feel like I'm not getting like a ton of progress here in terms of getting my groove back with the controls. So I think the boss rush will be hard for me, but that's really cool. That's a cool addition. I think 12 new levels and a new boss rush difficulty. And if you care about collectibles, there's new gacha machines, which I don't really care about, but there's cool new content and there's the visual upgrades, of course. All the original levels are now running at a high resolution, 1440p and 60 frames per second, and that's really cool to see. And of course, the new levels also run at 1440p and 60 frames per second, but they have a lot more visual flair too because of the crystals and everything. I'm simple-minded. I mean, I love how colorful the game was already, but you had these sparkly, shiny things all over the place. It looks really nice. I like it a lot. So yeah, I like the aesthetic even more so now. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, nice visual upgrades, some pretty nice add-on content. I do still wonder if like 12 new levels and the new boss rush difficulty is worth $20. Like, it feels a little minor, but I don't know. It's fine, I think overall it's still good new content being added here, and this is definitely like the most valuable Switch 2 edition so far. So with all these 4 editions, which were all revealed at the same time in the Switch 2 Direct back in April, they're all out now, and we have this weird range of quality. Super Mario Party Jamboree is terrible. Zelda is solid. It's a fine upgrade. You can get it for no additional cost if you have NSL Points expansion pack, so it's whatever. And then we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which is pretty good. But it's weird because there's 4 of them. They were all announced at the same time. They're all out now, less than 3 months out from the launch of the Switch 2. And I feel like Nintendo wouldn't go through the trouble of creating this Switch 2 edition thing if there weren't going to be more of them, right? Like, only 4 games get them, and it's kind of random. Like, I don't know why Mario Party Jamboree. So I'm sure there's more of them coming from Nintendo. Obviously, some third parties have done them. Maybe that's part of the reason why they exist, but I feel like Nintendo has plans for more. So I kind of wonder what those are going to look like and what games are going to get them. I think that's an interesting thing to consider because there are a lot of cool games on the Nintendo Switch that deserve more. And yeah, I wanted to bring up a few that I really like that I hope get Switch 2 editions. First and foremost, I think we have to mention, of course, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. This is one of the more recent games on the Switch. It released just a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic. It was like a true breath of fresh air for the Mario series, the 2D Mario series specifically. Super cool visuals, you know, way more original level designs and gimmicks. Like everything was really, really cool about this game except the boss fights. So I think a Switch 2 edition is totally warranted here. I think a new content could definitely be created, you know, more levels, more original boss fights this time around. I think would be really, really cool. They could do so much with this concept that they came up with Wonder, where like so much weird stuff can happen. So I think they could do a lot. And considering it's the 40th anniversary of Mario, I would be very surprised if there isn't something Mario related coming. There are even rumors that there's going to be a direct on September 13th, I believe. So, you know, that's very interesting, or 12th, something like that, you know. So that's going to be really interesting. I really do think there will be something for Super Mario Bros. Wonder there. They could add either a new campaign, new levels that are integrated into the world, or maybe they could do something kind of like what they did for New Super Mario Bros. 2, where they had like level packs for Coin Rush, or whatever it was called. I think because it's an anniversary date, it could make sense for them to add like random classic throwback levels remade in the Wonder style. I think that could also be interesting. So yeah, I think those are two very valid options for Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And I think also, because it's a 2D game, it's fairly simplistic. This could be a really good showcase where Nintendo could easily run this game at 4K 60 frames per second on a TV, and also get 120 frames per second if you're playing in handheld mode, or you know, at a lower resolution on the TV. I think that would be good because Nintendo hasn't really made a game that uses 120 frames per second so far. And I think Mario Bros. Wonder would be like a perfect fit for something like that. So I think those are upgrades that would make a ton of sense for Mario Bros. Wonder. And yeah, that game could really use a little more original stuff. Not that the levels that are there weren't, but I think it'd be nice if they had like more boss fights, like if a new campaign added more original bosses, that would be cool. And I mean, just more levels in 2D Mario are always fun to have, so yeah, that is something that I definitely like to see. Another potential one that I think Nintendo could probably upgrade for the Nintendo Switch 2, beyond just a free upgrade, would be Bayonetta 3. You know, that would be difficult, I understand, because that game is made by Platinum Games and there's been like a big shakeup at Platinum Games. But I think that game, obviously, there's the performance upgrade side of things where, you know, the game struggled to run on the Switch. You know, it was always 30 frames per second max. I think it would dip sometimes. Didn't really feel super smooth. And, you know, it could be a little bit, you know, from what I understand, they had to cut back on a lot of what they wanted to do for this game because of the power of the Switch. So I think it'd be cool if they could, you know, enhance the performance, increase the frame rates up to 60 frames per second stable, which I mean, I don't know for sure if that's included just by nature of the game and if it can run at 60 without an upgrade, but you know, 60 frames per second, higher resolution, but just expand the world, add more things into the world, which I feel like they probably wanted to do. You know, you could add more content to this for sure, like more side content, more quests, something, you know, and make the world richer in terms of the environments, just fill them up with more things, make it more alive. I think that could be interesting. I feel like there's definitely ways they could add more content to Bayonetta 3 and expand on the story a bit more, maybe. You know, follow up after the ending. You know, I feel like there's definitely something being teased for the future at the end of that game, so they could create like a sort of epilogue for that. I don't know, I would just like to see this game run at a better frame rate resolution and to really see what the full vision for this game was, because it feels like it was really pared down to be able to run on the original Switch. So I think it'd be cool to be able to see that much more content on the Switch 2 edition of Bayonetta 3. And while we're at it, I think it would also be really cool if Astral Chain got the same treatment. That was also developed by Platinum Games, and it was co-owned by Platinum and Nintendo initially, but my understanding is that Nintendo has now bought all of the rights to Astral Chain, so maybe they could go to someone else to do it. And yeah, I think it'd be really cool if we could get more content from Astral Chain. I love that game so much. It's gorgeous. I think just a performance improvement, better visuals would be amazing. But I'd just love to see more stories in this world, so any way it could be expanded or some kind of challenge, I don't know. Anything that could be added to this game would be great. It's kind of hard to like picture exactly what would be added to these titles, but I think it would be really, really cool to just have more of them in a way that it doesn't have to be a whole new game. I think it would be better if you got a whole new game in those series, but I think Switch 2 editions of that would be really cool too. So yeah, those are two smaller requests there. Since I brought up Mario Wonder already, I think another good example that could be maybe enhanced is actually Super Mario 3D All-Stars. That was an anniversary release, it was timed, and we're at another big anniversary for Mario, so maybe they could re-release that and improve it even more. I think they could add Super Mario Galaxy 2, maybe something like Super Mario 3D Land, who knows, add a couple more games to it. I think it would be really cool to see that for a Switch 2 edition. And take advantage of that extra power to enhance the existing games even more. I think you could definitely make Super Mario 64 widescreen this time around, increase the output resolution that much more, do the same for Super Mario Sunshine and Galaxy. Just increase the resolution on those games. I think that would be nice, but I think mostly just making them widescreen would be great. And more like music, actual music tracks or something. Like you could really just repackage this with more bonus content and it'd be a lot better. Music, concept art from these games, something that that you were kind of interested in looking at beyond just like the first time you would up the game or something. I think it'd be nice to have like something that felt a little more celebratory than what we got with the original 3D All-Stars, even though I did love that release. Yeah, I think it'd be nice to get a little bit more of that. But yeah, honestly, I'm trying to like come up with more ideas for what could be a Switch 2 edition out of Nintendo's lineup. And it's complicated because it feels like a lot of these games, like they either should get sequels at this point because they're really old, like something like Super Mario Odyssey. Like, what are you gonna do there now after 8 years? At this point, you're just overdue for a new 3D Mario game, I would say. So I don't think there's anything else to be done there. ARMS is also super old. I'd love to see more of ARMS, but it probably makes more sense to have a sequel. Maybe Ring Fit Adventure, but that probably just deserves a sequel anyway. Like, you need like a whole new accessory for it. It wouldn't really be playable on the old Switch, so it wouldn't really work as a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. So yeah, I don't see that happening either. Luigi's Mansion 3 is another one where like, at this point I think we should just get Luigi's Mansion 4, really. Like, it's been long enough that that game should be around the corner, so I don't see that happening. Maybe Super Smash Bros. Ultimate would be a good one. I don't see how Nintendo can build a whole new game that goes even further than Smash Bros. Ultimate, so I think a Switch 2 edition of it that, obviously improves resolution, frame rates and all that, and also adds a few more characters, whatever it might be, something based specifically on Switch 2 games. I think they could probably do something with that to make that worth it. If it's like a $20 upgrade, you can just add a few more stages and a few more characters. You don't have to go too far with it, and it would be just fine. And people love Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's one of the biggest games ever on the Switch, so just adding a little bit more and making it run at a higher resolution and frame rates and all that for a Switch 2 edition, people would eat that up for sure. Maybe the Switch 2 edition could even like include some of the DLC for free, though they didn't do that for Zelda Breath of the Wild. I don't think they'll do it here, but yeah, some of those things could make this upgrade worth it for existing owners. Just having the game in a higher resolution on Switch 2, I think would be great. And then, whatever they want to do for Smash Brothers next, a whole new concept of gameplay or something, they can save that for a little later down the line. Just upgrading the existing package would probably go a long way here. That would be pretty cool too. Otherwise though, I really just don't see like a whole lot here that you could do to a lot of Nintendo's games. I'm sure they could find a way, but like without it overlapping with some of the things that we already have, like you could do more Zelda games, you could do more Mario parties, but like what is the point of that instead of just making a new game, And without also going back to very old games that probably should just have sequels at this point. I guess there isn't that much that Nintendo really should be investing in to make a Switch 2 edition. There are a lot of great games on the Switch, but it's hard to imagine how we would expand upon them. Like, I love Mario and Luigi Brothership, but I can't really see how they could. I mean, I guess they could because they did also have like those remakes of the Mario and Luigi games on the 3DS where they had like a new side quest thing, side mode. Maybe they could do something like that for Mario and Luigi Brothership if they make it good, like last time. They could add more content to Mario and Luigi Brothership and also upgrade like the frame rates and load times on that, because I know those games that game suffered a little bit on the Switch from long load times. But really, yeah, you're kind of a little bit limited here in the options you have. But it is weird to think that like Nintendo introduced this own concept of Switch 2 editions. They only have 4 games for it. There's not that much potential for more from Nintendo. And third parties have kind of come in and made some of their own, but they're also not all in on it. Some games have Switch 2 editions that are paid, kind of like Nintendo's. Most of them are cheaper than Nintendo's. A lot of them have free upgrades, and others just like they have Switch 2 versions, and you can kind of have an upgrade pack. You look at something like Hogwarts Legacy, and it's like you can upgrade to the Switch 2 version at a lower cost, but it's actually just purchasing the Switch 2 version of the game. These two kind of separate copies of the game. It's not the same one, so you can kind of, get 2 games for a way cheaper, which is, I guess, nice. But it's like, it's just like a weird scenario right now where like this. I don't know if Switch 2 edition as a big brand, like a big overarching brand like Nintendo introduced it as. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense right now, because I was trying to think of things to bring up here, and there's not a whole lot that Nintendo can do to do more Nintendo Switch 2 editions with a lot of their games, I feel like. So yeah, like aside from performance upgrades, which they can do for free and have done for free, yeah, I don't see a lot of more Switch 2 edition games coming in the future. And it's weird. It's kind of weird to think about that, like in a few years, like just a few months probably, we just won't really hear about Switch 2 edition games anymore. But yeah, those are just some thoughts I had. I know those are a little bit loose, but I haven't had a lot of time to plan. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.